Hello, good morning, viewers. So, welcome back to another class. So, today specifically, we'll be looking at variables because yesterday, in the course of discussing, hypothesis, I was mentioning, variables, repeatedly, and I know that my viewers might be interested to also, know what a variable is. And today we are going to delve into discussing what is a variable in research because they are very important. So when we talk of variables, it is anything that is of interest to a researcher. So basically, variables can be described as anything that is of interest to a researcher, and they are very important. They are very useful because they help, and hypothesis use variable to test a kind of prediction. And again, the researcher also use the variable to determine or to design the research question. In other words, the researcher also use variables to rationale his scope of the study, because most of the variables will tell you the extent to which you are going to frame your research question so that you don't go outside the scope of your study, so that you stay focused on those key variables that are so important, that they are so peculiar to you as a researcher, which you intend to major in the course of your study. So that is why variables are very important, because if you're going to develop your hypothesis, if you're going to cast your research questions, you make sure that there are key components, there are key words in your research topic that need to be actually focused on. So those things that interest you, those things that makes you to stay on board, to investigate or to undertake that particular study, these are variables. These are things that you are interested in. So that is why I say a variable is anything that is of interest to a researcher. Now, what are the types or typologies of variables? Number one, we have independent variables. And what are independent variables? These are variables that stand on their own in a research. These are variables that stand on their own in a research. And they have a kind of a relationship because they are not depending on another variable. They are standing on their own. Why? Number two is the dependent variable. And the dependent variables are variables that cannot stand on their own, but they depend on the independent variables for them to be able to survive in a study. For example, if a mass communication student is interested in undertaking a research, to investigate, newspaper coverage of kidnapping cases in Nigeria, then you can see that the independent variable is, the newspaper coverage, or the coverage. So that is the independent variables, the newspaper coverage. Then the dependent variable is the kidnapping cases. So for kidnapping cases to be given prominence or to be given, a frequency in terms of reportage is depending on the newspaper coverage. So if let alone kidnapping cases cannot be manifested in the newspaper pages, so it is depending on the coverage. So coverage, newspaper coverage here is the independent variable, while the kidnapping cases is the dependent variable. Now, number three, we have what is called discrete variables. And what is a discrete variables? These are variables that does not change in the course of a research